Welcome to Duncan Thorin Shield's YouTube channel. I managed to con Duncan into convincing his friend to pay me thousands and thousands of dollars as a professional Counter-Strike player, so maybe he can convince you that some of his analysis is correct.
Right, this is going to be an episode of Reflections, and my guest for this one is a return guest. It is apEX from Vitality. Now, I actually looked, and it is so long ago. It's actually in like May of 2017 that we did the last one of these. So it's literally like a solid 6 years ago. And at that time, people might know, that was when we were just briefly into the French super team. The one where we merged together the EnVyUs with the Titan /G2 people and made that team that we never had with kennyS and shox on the same team and all the rest of it. That's, if people don't know, one of the things I always thought was crazy about the French scene. Like, I know it because I know the relationships and how people got replaced or why people got in, but it was always insane to me that you had kennyS and shox in the same country and then it's never even been the same team the whole time. From Source to the fucking CSGO. And these teams are winning, like, one championship is with shox, then one championship is with kennyS. Like, it was ridiculous to me, the idea, because they're not even the same fucking role. One's an AWP, one's a primary rifler. Like, this should have been tried earlier. So when it finally happened, it was so underwhelming. Like, where's all the majors? Where's all the championships? What do you think went wrong with this super team? Why didn't it work out like everyone hoped?
Well, first of all, I think that the way that the team was done was pretty a mess, because the players were deciding for everything back then. The staff didn't, so it was us, the players, choosing this the team overall. So I think that was the first mistake. The second one was obviously the relationship between the players. I think overall shox and NBK has always had a rough time together. In about 1 year and a half, I don't think they ever talked together 1v1. It was really weird between each other. So obviously when you have such behavior and in the team, it cannot work. It's really difficult. And then we took time to find also the way we wanted to play with shox. I remember we found a way. I remember we won Dreamhack Malmo in a good fashion, but then shox said, okay, I don't have the energy to call like that all the time. So it's gonna be difficult for me to do that. So yeah, it went left and right. And as I said, the behavior from the whole team was, I mean, from the two players I talked about, was pretty tough. It was too many egos, not ready to give their whole best, to put themselves on the side to be able to perform. Because obviously in a team, when you have such an experienced team with a lot of talent like that, you need players to go on the side in some sense. You need to put yourself on the side, and it didn't work. So obviously, I think that what could have worked with a real in-game leader to have shox and kennyS together, but with shox as in-game leader, obviously he wasn't at his prime because it's being in-game leader. So obviously, it's pretty tough. But yeah, I think they would have made another team with a really good in-game leader would have been much better, I guess.
This was also one of the teams where, as you're saying, shox, because he became like not just like doing some cut, he was the full in-game leader, and that was the main player that had the responsibility. I don't think he ever came back from that, mate. Like, he still was sometimes good, or he played a role when he was in your later Vitality, but he was never shox. He was never like the guy who could be the best rifler in the world, like someone you would build a whole team around. Can you explain a bit about this guy to me? Because if people don't know, he did have that reputation. He was a bit of a rock and roll star at one point in time. He was, I mean, he had the nickname the Princess, and it was deserved from the stories I've heard. But it's cool, like, put it this way, if you made one of those movies like Wolf of Wall Street about CS, you'd make it about shox. Like, he's the player you'd definitely make it about. He'd be the fucking sick character. So explain this guy to us, because obviously he could be so brilliant as a player, but I always had this weird feeling like he just played off feel or something. It didn't seem like he was the scientist, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay, so I used to play with shox in 2011 on Source. So that's the first time I played with him. He was back then with NBK and EPICENTER. Obviously, all three of them were the best CS Source players. But yeah, I'm gonna say that shox, he used to be a bit of a diva in some sense, and I think he's still a diva in some sense. That even in Vitality was. So I'm gonna take the example of, because when Alex was the in-game leader, they had a lot of troubles together. Because the problem is, when you play with shox, you need to understand the way you need to use him and the way he wants to play. And you need to build that around him. Obviously, we had ZywOo that was a bit above him, but with ZywOo, it's fine. You can do pretty much everything with him. But with shox, you need to play a particular style. So with Alex, it was really bad. I remember we won the EPICENTER, the last tournament from 19, and I think he had the 0.85 rating shox, which is crazy when you think about shox.
Sure.
And I remember that when I switched to being game leader, that was my goal was to put shox good again. And in the sense that I knew about him and I knew how to use him. Obviously, he wasn't the shox that we all used to know. But I mean, back then it was way easier with, I think Existence kind of understood him as well. But yeah, use shox was a difficult part, I think, when if you don't know him. But yeah, he's kind of a diva. There is like, I remember that I will say a few things about him that I love and that are not bad at all. But sometimes shox is like, yeah, he's coming to TeamSpeak and we've been doing good. And he says, I think we should go back to a play style from 2012. Like he comes like that and saying two things. And you're like, I was in game leader. What the fuck are you talking about, mate? Like you need to take him in the right way because okay. Yeah, he's a bit, he's over. That's why for him being in game leader was pretty tough back then because he has the ideas that come in. You can change play style like that. We changed his play style like 3 or 4 times in 4 months. That was pretty tough. Like him being in Fragger with a group, being lurking, it was pretty tough in some sense. But yeah, he is a bit of a diva. But when shox is in the zone, and when shox is not the princess shox, when he really wants to win and he's ready to give everything, I think is the third, I would say third most impactful player I play with, just in terms of helping with the calls. The way lurks, everything he brings to the team with a small gimmicks he can add to the team and that kind of stuff. I think obviously up there is the ZywOo. kennyS also was also a big game changer, and him as well, but in a different way. Not only about killing people, but just about the way he leads the team. He was leading the team with me and helping me with the young guns.
When, as you say, when you had him in Vitality again later on, in this team, it seemed like obviously, like people look at the rating, he obviously wasn't like a star player, but it seemed like you almost got like a second, like lease on life, you might say in English. He had a little revival of it, a renaissance to his game because he still had like, there's certain aspects of the game go last. Like he was still an amazing clutch player, even in this period of time. You put him in a 1v2 or something, he's going to win it, you know. So how did you try to use him in Vitality?
Well, I know that with shox, the problem is that you need to give him some space. So on Inferno, for example, he's not a good lurker if you don't take mid control and you don't leave him in mid control. If you don't take mid control and you go banana, for example, I mean, it's a small example, he's not going to be able to use the space in the right way. But if you give him a lot, like, for example, like doing a lot of pressure and helping him to get this space, then he knows what to do. Then he knows how to call people back. He knows to do a lot of impact kills. He is in good position to lurk or to clutch. I mean, he just needs this little like space to be able to lurk at his full potential. And obviously for me that was I know that a lot of times with Spinx, for example, right now I told him things that we learned with shox together. I think, yeah, shox. I mean, I didn't say shox was doing that, but I was saying, yeah, I think it's really good to do that because I remember that we were doing the same with shox, and he was really good. For example, he was one of the first lurker being like, for example, on a short overpass, being able to play super slow on short overpass on T-side, taking shots, just taking shot and doing nothing while we were taking and hearing the rotation and ask for a comeback or, yeah, let's go here, let's do that and do that. And that was so helpful for me because obviously I cannot call a go back B without information.
Yes.
I mean, it's no way. It wouldn't make sense for me. So the rule was that I needed him to take those responsibilities. Or when I wanted to come back B, like how? Do we need to flash close monster? Do we need to go slow? And because he had all this information, and he's really good at that, and he's really good at reacting to information. And I think that's something that I didn't see that much in CS scene. I've been playing with a lot of players, but in terms of like playing on information, it was, I think, the strength of the old Golden generation, French generation with Existence, Smith, and shox most likely. They are the 3 players that being able to play on that.
Right, since you referenced earlier, obviously there's the MBK aspect as well. Right, I want to ask about this guy because he's another person where for so long, he's been the person who did the interviews in English, and people he was a very popular personality. But I think as a result, people never knew who he was behind the scenes. Like, if people don't know, he's a very, very intense guy, and he's definitely a guy where, I mean, we would just say, I'd say he's stubborn, even though I actually like him and he's a friend of mine. Like, I would describe it like this. To me, if you look at his career when he was just not the in-game leader, there's a reason he had the most trophies of any French player, and he was like top 5 of all trophies ever in Counter-Strike. He was in all these world #1 teams. Like, he deserves it. He actually was a fabulous player, switching roles. But he's another player like shox that was tormented by the law that they have to become the in-game leader. I must be the in-game leader for whatever reason. And in his case, he won't want to hear this because he himself had his own beefs with existence and shox. But mate, you basically became them at the end, because some of the stories I heard, dude, I'll tell you a quick story about G2 when shox was still in the team, when it was Malek came in. Malek told me, I did a whole episode about this. He told me basically, look, he didn't say it this way, but knowing the scene, I'll translate. Essentially, what he did was, because shox still sort of wanted to think he was the in-game leader or have an input, they just sort of like tricked him to make him think he was it. They'd be like, oh, what you're going to do is you're going to call like pistol rounds. That'll be your domain, you know? And then on certain like CT parts, you'll decide the setup and you can switch it up anytime. And what they were sort of doing was making him think he had responsibility, but really like the real IGL was someone else, right? I've heard like, that's what basically had happened with MBK, because everyone remembers it was the initial project began of Vitality as he's the in-game leader. And then I remember there was a weird thing where I was messaging like Alex or something. I was like, I've heard like you call on some of the maps. He was like, yeah, like don't tell anyone, but basically I call every map except Inferno, and that's the one like we let MBK still call, but he gets to call like CTs, like he decides the setups. Now I will say, when I did Flashpoint and I could actually hear the comms, it is true actually. I've actually heard when he was in OG, he did call CT setups very well, by the way. If he was crossfire with someone on like Inferno A site, he would do really well. He would give information well. Some of these things aren't totally nonsense, but it sounds like in Vitality, no, after a period of time when you heard Alex, no one really wanted him to be the IGL, but you can't just say to him like, you're not the IGL, we don't want you to be, and sort of fuck off. Or if you know MBK, he's not going to take that well. He's not just going to go, well, okay, no problem. Nope. So give me the story. What was going on here? Because it sounds wild.
Well, what is fun is it's true that I haven't mentioned that about shox, but that's true. I think he's a guy. I think that for me, he shouldn't be in-game leader, and he is not a guy that should have done that. But the good part with him is that he's really good with responsibilities, but not too much. So obviously giving them the pistol rounds and some like he was doing also force buys for us, like creating strat. He was really good at that. So I always gave him this. I always gave him this space as well. And then he felt that he had more success towards and more freedom. And I don't know, it just felt better overall. So it was really good. He needs also to work, but I think he's a guy that he can't have like the whole responsibilities. I don't think it's good. But yeah, for NBK, I think it's a bit like okay, obviously NBK used to be a fantastic player, like one of the best I play with, because he was able to do everything. Support was a more support player, but not like support in terms of nades. It was more like doing like the passive lurk and the late run and those kind of stuff. He was able to entry. Lurking, I think, was good back then, but then it was a bit harder for him. But yeah, he was AVP on source as well. He didn't play it with too much on CSGO, but he used to be a fantastic AWPer, and he is the type of guy that is really rare in CS, that is able to do everything. I think that in general, we tried with Dupree, helping him to be lurking on some map, but no, he's not done for that. And ABK had the chance to be able to play everything. So obviously he was always in top team in France. Why? Because he was the most impactful guy, because obviously you have those stars and you will always have those stars like kennyS or shox. But you need to fill the gaps, and he was the best to fill the gap, and he was still performing individually. And also with Happy, he was a really good baiter for Happy.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
So he was able to do a double kill, and then Happy was finishing the round. And he was accepting that, like not like other players. Like for example, shox could never play with Happy on the same bomb site. It could never happen because they had the similar like bait way and blah blah blah. So NBK used to be like fantastic in terms of a lot of things, and I think what was pretty bad for him is when he wanted to have more freedom, more responsibilities in the team. So being in game leader and blah blah blah. I think it was a big waste, because he was feeling he could do it because he had also a little bit of responsibility, but you have to know that obviously having a small responsibility in the team and having the whole responsibility is way different. And that's pretty sad. I mean, he was pretty good at everything else, and I think he was. But yeah, I understand the way that he was like, okay, I'm really good at doing everything. Why not game leader? But the problem is that he tried too many times, in my opinion, and I think he should have done one or two times, and then going back to what he did the best. And he was really important for the French scene in some sense. But also, as you said, he's a bit stubborn, and that wasn't easy. So he was like a guy taking a lot of duels and blah blah. And when he wasn't working, we asked him like, take a step back, mate. And blah, blah. But he wasn't able to do that. And also, he wasn't easy in the human part sometimes to talk to him. You felt he was really like cold, in some sense, and it wasn't easy to be honest with him. And I think we had a lot of troubles like that. That's why shox and him couldn't speak together. Like it wasn't possible. So that's pretty sad. I think I played with NBK a lot of times. I think I played with him like 4 years, and it was fantastic 4 years because we got a lot of trophies. I got my first major with him. I got a lot of trophies, and I think we were a bit similar because in French scene also we lacked a bit these entry fragging parts. People didn't want to do entry fragger because obviously you have worse stats and it's pretty annoying. And me, of course, I like to be an entry fragger, but I was okay to do something else because I don't want to be the mate all the time. I wanted to do something else, but I always took it for the team because I knew that if I was doing that, maybe the other could shine, and that's pretty fun. Because I will say something that I was with Kenny like 1 month ago, and we had a drink together, and we were talking about the old good times. And he told me, Dan, your strength is to put the player you are with better. I put myself for Kenny for a long time when we played together, just to put him in the best situation, creating setups because he wasn't a hardworking guy, and finding a few tricks and playing everything for him. And that feels really good after all that he realized that I was doing that only for him and not for myself, for example. But yeah, I think that's. NBK was also this kind of player that was able to shine, but not like only stat-wise or blah, but just by the way he was playing and the way he was helping the team. And I think that a player like him are really rare. I think Krim was a bit like that, but was way less entry fragger. He was way more like passive player, but NBK could play a lot of roles. And yeah, he was like one of the key player of French scene for a long time, and prop to him for being like such an amazing and legendary player for so many years.
On the topic of kennyS, who obviously you played with for a number of years and was an excellent player, like you said, one of the game changers, you nailed it. The problem he had in his career was, he'll even tell you, like, people think it's just at the end he was like born a CSGO. Dude, I think he first told me in something mad like 2016 that he didn't really care about like playing anymore, but it was just his job, and he didn't know like how do I quit? Like, I don't really want to be a streamer. That's also long hours. Like, essentially, because he was just really good. Like, I always used to say he used to just like become like the 12th best player in the world for 6 months, then get motivated again and try just become like 5th best again. Like, there's certain people like him and shox, like me and you have to be really good at our jobs and grind and really try hard and improve. These guys can just like try at one point and have like 6 months off, then come back. Like that's why in some ways they are above a lot of other players. But that was also obviously somewhat Kenny's downfall, because I even used to say to him in his style of play, like, look at what people like Device have done, where they like learn some of the aspects of the game strategically so they can reposition when they're having a bad game. Kenny's problem was he was like a guy who just, I think of him like the player Ronaldinho, if people know him in football, where he was insanely skilled, but you hear all these stories where like he'd never practiced, he would do drinking the night before, essentially he would just do whatever he wanted in the game, and if that was brilliant in the game, you win the game, and if it's not, then you lose the game. And so the problem with Kenny was, even in the game, he just did like what you would do if you had the best AWP ever. You just go to the most obvious spot, they all run on the corner, you just kill all 5 players, and then there you go. But it's like, that can't last forever. It definitely doesn't last when your game goes off the boil, or there's other great players, or your team's just not that good. So one of the things that always hurt me was, I can see now why the online period killed his career, because now none of the games mattered, and now you had to play every single night, and now all these online kids are going to outperform you, and eventually, by the end, he didn't want to play, no one wanted him, and it's just kind of just a whack way for his career to end. Like, even though I like to celebrate him because he retired I wanted like one last run on LAN, like one last 6 months where he's really good. You explained it before. I mean, literally in Titan, You used to literally be the guy who would jump on the corner on banana, so they shot you so he could peek out and kill the person and start a highlight clip. So in the frag movie, people won't notice apEX is the one that sets up nearly all these frags, and you were doing a great job of it though. So what does Kenny need to be at his best, and what do you think of like the dynamic of his career? Like I said, like, 'cause he's a very unique player compared to other World Counter-Strike players, I feel like.
Yes, obviously. I mean, in terms of talent, pure talents, I think he was really crazily good. It was insanely crazy to meet him, because when I met him was back in 2011, and we were playing on some back then you had like small communities, and with Kenny, everyone was thinking he was cheating, and he was really toxic guy, really young, really toxic. And I took it under my shoulder, I would say, and we did the first line together. His first LAN was a Pixel. It was really non-French LAN, and we won it against shox and Spinx. And I remember I got destroyed by Spinx because he was really stressed. And on those two, most likely, that's when Spinx was the best opener in the world back then. So, but yeah, that's the first time I met him, and he was a really like shy guy, not being able to speak too much, and he was really shy. But he was so talented, and obviously to become the player he was playing so much. I mean, we played so much together on Source. It was pretty insane. We were like not going at school together just to play together the mornings, and we were playing the whole day together, and he was grinding so much. I think with time, most likely, I think what happened for him is that in 14, I think he discovered GERS, which is what can happen to a lot of people.
Classic
and I think
French
he got
scene curse.
exactly. And I think he got he got a bad relation, and the girl broke his hurt, and it was really tough for him to think about CS. And then he had a kind of downgrade because he didn't care about CS, as you said. He was in really he was feeling shit the way he was in Titan when I joined in the team. And then when he joined the team, I tried to do everything for him to perform. And I think the best years he had was with me in the teams, obviously. And I tried to work with him. I tried to work for him. I tried to give everything. I was just asking him, okay, I'm ready to find tricks, because back then, obviously, we didn't have much analysts, and it was easier to do like new things and do small gimmicks on the game. So I said, just play individually, be strong individually, and me, I will be able to carry you in another way. And we did that together, and we had obviously we were not known as the best duo, because I wasn't fragging like a top 5 player in the world or top 10, but I was doing more for him than anyone else will do for a player. A bit like Taco did for Coldzera in some sense. In another way, just baiting and trying to put him in the best condition. And I was doing the same with Kenny, and he became the best opener, and he was at some point the best player in the world in 14. And but I'm just sad that he didn't work just a bit more, because he was doing really nothing back then, and that's really sad, because he could have done so much in the game. But it's also his decision, and I don't think he regrets it. I think he just lived his best life. He was talented, and it's the way he is. We're not all like you and me. We're not all like hardworking people being ready to do everything. Some people are just talented, and like Ronaldinho, he was the best player at some point, but he had to stop earlier than a lot of players because he was drinking a lot of alcohol and having too much fun. So obviously the body doesn't follow. In CS, obviously it's a bit different, but obviously it's a really monster game. We have a lot of tournaments, and it's not that easy. And at some point he was tired, and maybe I don't know if it's only the online era that killed him. I think also it's the meta of the game. I think it wasn't easy to repick as an opener. He had to work more to become better. I remember in G2, in the international roster, he was already in the decline. He wasn't as good as before, unfortunately. And yeah, I think that he just needed to do little more work. He would have been such a fantastic guy. I mean, even more, I think he would have done something that few people would have done, because in terms of pure skill, he was above everyone. And that's why I used him so well, and I put myself on the side, because I knew I didn't have this talent. But it was fine for me. I was ready to play for him. But yeah, I think if he would have worked just a bit more, he would have become even...
He'd probably be the GOAT, let's be real. Maybe he'd be the GOAT, right?
As you said, as the pure oper, I think it was one of the best. Because nowadays Opera are a bit different. They're also really good with rifle. I would take the two best, like ZywOo and Simple. If they rifler in the team, it wouldn't change.
Yes.
It wouldn't change much because the AK aim is crazy. I think that ZywOo is a bit less good than Simple with Op though, and the other way around as well.
Yeah.
I think ZywOo is more able to do everything with a rifle. He can do entry, he can clutch, he can do everything, and I think that both of them are really different than others. I think Shiro is also good with rifle and Monesi as well, but not as good as the others.
Yes.
So yeah, Kenny was like this pure Monesi. I think we see a lot of kennyS in Monesi with like this crazy talent. I think Monesi right now is working his ass off, but we can see those flicks. We haven't seen that for a long time, like those crazy flicks. It's so kennyS, and yeah, it was a pleasure to play with him, even though sometimes we had a lot of fights because I wanted him to play more. And when you a dedicated player like me doing, I mean, you know, working 130, 40 hours per 2 week, and you see your teammate playing 50 and doing only the practice, you're like, boy, I'm fine working for you, but just give me a bit, because otherwise I would get crazy. And that's the only thing I regret. But otherwise, when I look back at all of the things, I think, yeah, that was a fantastic moment to play together. I was happy that he was over at some point because I needed a break, kinda,
Sure.
like in a relationship. I needed a break when I got kicked from G2. But yeah, I think that was a fantastic moment to play with him. And obviously, I wished he would have done even more, but it's how it is.
When you, like you say about your style of play, where you were someone where it's actually another thing about MBK, I've always given him props. It's like you're the two players, as far as I know, who just always did your work. Like you always woke up and did your DM and did figure out what you're doing to do in the games, and turn up for the scrims. But actually, people might not know. I mean, it wasn't just because it was shox and kennyS. There's been a lot of players in the French scene where either they were these mercurial talents who could just afford to not practice all the time, or they were just super veteran players. Like some of the other ones had played like Source for 5 or 6 years, and then they played CSGO 5, 6, 7 years in top teams. So I can understand why some people have what you call waning motivation. Sometimes they're motivated, sometimes they're not as motivated. Was it tough for you to be someone who's grinding all the time, putting in all those hours, and especially because you're playing entry role? Like that's not the role you can just carry the whole game from. You're setting up space for them to carry the game. So there must have been frustrations, like you're saying, right?
Yes. I had some moments I can talk about that without a problem. I remember, for example, in G2, in 17, we had really important tournaments. I think we had in a row, we had was the major qualifier for Krakow. We had ECS final and we had Cologne. And I remember that was the beginning of the practice rooms, kinda. And I remember my 4 teammates playing other games all the time, not playing CS at all. I remember I don't remember the name of the games, but they were playing like Age of Empire, or they were playing something else basically. And kennyS, NBK, Body, and shox. And me, I was trying to be the example. Like the guy you're looking at, like, oh, what the fuck? The guy is grinding. I was playing FPL 24/7. I was doing this much. I was trying my best to be the best at my role, and I didn't feel like the other way doing that. And that was really frustrating. That was really frustrating because also in the game, I remember that shox and Smith, they didn't give me like the freedom I wanted because I was working more. Why not giving me more freedom? Let's try at least. I remember on Overpass, I wanted to be more this. However, I had this role a bit with Existence, but I wanted to be this fur guy, like the Brazilian one. I wanted to be aggressive, taking 1v1 duels, and I could have done that without a problem. I was ready for that. But yeah, they were like almost the Yekinda way right now. And I was ready for that, but they didn't want, and now we had already enough trouble in the team, so I was putting myself on the side, and I was fine. But yeah, that was really frustrating. I remember in 17, I think at the end of the year, they do the top 20 HLTV, and I was 21st, which is like, I was like, imagine if I got just a bit more of this freedom, of this. I was okay to do everything. I was ready to sacrifice. I was ready to do a lot of things, but yeah, didn't have enough freedom in the team. So yeah, this with the work ethic that of my teammates who was really tough. I think I don't obviously shox at some moments, but I think in terms of work ethic, no one came close to my shoes in the French scene. The only one that I felt was close to me was in 19 was Alex, but the other ones, no way. They were super talented, but not ready to give everything. But you know, I was pretty sad because they could see like the LG guy, the Brazilian, when they came at the top. They were grinding so much, trying the best, and me, I always wanted to be at the top like forever. I was ready to work my ass off, and I always done that for forever. But yeah, it's really tough to. It took me some time to understand the way they work and the way they need to be in their life to have their balance as well. Because my balance was more to give my best, but that doesn't mean that sometimes the other needs less than me. And I didn't understand that back then. I was like, people need to work as much as me. Otherwise, it's not normal. And yeah, I understood that now that people are really different in that sense. I mean, for a few years now. But back then, that was really difficult for me because I was talking to the coaches. I was like, and I remember something. We were in Krakow, Krakow Major, the first PGL Krakow Major, and 2017, and we just lost. And I remember I was grinding for 3 months a lot, and I took a beer, and ironically, shox told me no alcohol at that moment. So I threw up my beer on the floor, and because I was mad. That was the end of my tournament. I gave everything, and I told them we were discussing, and then I was fine. I was talking to everyone, and I said also the problem with the team is that we're not grinding enough. We're not giving our best. It's just like it's always the same. The young guys, they want to come. They just behind you. They want to get over you. They're ready. But yeah, I remember shox saying that no, it's not the problem. I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. I need to go to vacation right now. And yeah, people were not grinding enough at some point, and it was always been a really tough moment for me.
One of the other things is, if people don't know, like that story you told there, well, earlier in your career when the teams were winning the championships and you were absolutely one of the best at the entry role, you used to be a top 20 player. You would get on those rating lists. Now, look, it is like football. If you're not like the ones that are winning, all the roles that aren't basically the star player, you just don't get on those lists. Like, if you want to be like Maldini or something, you better on AC Milan better be winning. Like, if you want to be like a defensive midfielder, you better be on like the best Bundesliga team or something. If you're just on a normal team, it doesn't matter how good you are in those roles, you don't get to be celebrated as a star. And I feel like in your career, you were one of the players where, like, if we're doing like the greatest entries ever, the joke is the other guys in your team is you and Dupree, basically, if you look over your careers. But the reason why a lot of people probably just looked at kennyS and shox and others is because in your teams, especially the happy one and then this G2 super team, these guys, like, that was when the role of entry fragger went too far. Like, entry to me is like a tendency or like something largely you do in the game. If you can create the right scenario, they eventually were using you like the meme would be. Like, they would just call you, like, come over here, you like, rotate all the way over. Then you just run through all the smokes and you get shot by like 50 people. And at the end, like, you can't carry a game like that. Like, you just become the bait, like you say, at that point in time. And I feel like they really ran you into the ground at one point in time in the game before they understood the game had moved on, right?
You're totally right. That's the big difference we had with Dupree. I think Dupree was less entry fragging than me. I mean, it's a different entry fragging. Me, I was the mid. We were throwing the mid away and give info and tell us what's going on. And yeah, that was pretty bad at some point. It was pretty bad to play like that, to be the mid, because also in the team, people were like, okay, apEX is there, it's fine. I don't need to entry. I can play my roles. And yeah, I remember like on Overpass, I was doing the A guy map control, and they say, we'll go back B, and I was still the guy entry fragging on B. And yeah, I accepted that once again because I also knew the chance I had to live from my passion and winning so much money and changing my life. So I didn't want to make any trouble back then. I was fine. I wasn't fine, but I just like the we had already so much trouble in the French scene. So if I came and say, knock, 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 you're pissing me off, I don't want to enter anymore, they would have been like, it would have been even more mess. So I would just put myself on the side, and sometimes I regret it in some team that I wish I would have more, as I said, space in the team, being able to do, because it's entry fragger is not only, you see nowadays, obviously I wouldn't be close to the level he has, but Nico, he is not entry fragging, but he's taking map control. He's the map control guy, and you can see that it's also a good role because you can do whatever you want at some point, and it's also like your strength. And I was fine with that. But for example, I remember on Overpass I was the A guy back then, and the maximum I could go was balloon. I couldn't go further. I couldn't get toilet alone when they were doing. If I was feeling it, obviously not doing it 24/7. And I remember I did that once in one game. It was against Gambit in Auckland. And I think we did double overtime, and I finished in 45 frags because I didn't care. I was like, fuck off. I play myself. I play the way I want, and it worked. And obviously after they told me, yeah, it's good, but you shouldn't do that. And so I was like, okay, fair enough. Fuck it. It's fine. I tried. I see it works, but it's how it is. But yeah, it was pretty dumb to have him it. And I think like that's what I saw also in G2 when Jackson was in the team. He was also this mid. Yep. Jax is a guy that he likes to entry, but aim-wise, I think that is crazily good. He doesn't. He's not like a pure. He couldn't be like lurking or whatever, but in terms of entry fragging, being able, he could be one of the best. And we could see that when we use him as a stand-in, I knew how to use him. Even though this guy is 31 now, I think soon, his aim is better than 95% of the pro players, and in top 20 teams. But like I think that Nexao is not like also a really hard-working guys, and he didn't know how to use him. And it's pretty sad because I think this guy can carry your game just by being an entry fragger. I think he could have been better than me when I was at my prime because his aim is so sharp, and he's also like, what I love with him is he's fearless, and I think it's a big quality in terms of in-game leader. I remember you writing down that whatever could happen to myself and to the team, I was sticking to the plan and sticking to be the entry fragger of the team. And I remember I had rough moments. I remember one of the final, you were there in Dreamhack London 15. I had really bad stats. We won 2-0, but I had minute 30 or 25. But I watched my game then. I was like, okay, what went wrong? Well, 85% of the time I couldn't shoot. So it's also about that. So it's also about doing like the bad job, and that's what people don't understand. But yeah, doing it 24/7, it's pretty tough and it's pretty bad, and that's why right now it doesn't exist anymore. Where you don't have like those crazy entry fragging like I used to be, and it's good because some of the player will have killed themselves.
One of the things about when you were this entry, though, that I actually always thought was really impressive was if you had the game where you had the 25 kills, obviously you can have all these highlights and people thought you had like crazy aim. Like, no disrespect, but I never thought, compared to some of the players in the scene, I thought you had a good aim. You never had crazy aim to me. But the thing I was always impressed with is, even though they all lie in interviews and say that they don't care who they're facing and, you don't think that way, and they don't care if it's simple or ZywOo and Eco, they all do. Like most players, when they see in the kill feed, when they're running in fourth into the site, and it's like ZywOo or Simple's killing all their teammates, they'd start thinking like, well, I'm about to be in the frag movie, like whatever, you just run in and you just hope for the best. Somehow, even if you knew that the player you run into was like the best player in the world, you always somehow kept your nerve. It seemed like you gave yourself a chance, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I don't care right now also as in-game leader. It's also a strength I had. I think I played against Simple Prime in 21. I think it was Simple Prime in Navi. And I remember at the major, my goal was to play on him. And we almost beat them on nuke, but because he was back then doing the same rotations, so I didn't care. I wasn't like, oh, it's simple. Let's not go on him. Obviously, you're not gonna feed him. You're not gonna give him like those eco kills, for example. Never do that. Just go away, mate. Go to on perfect Thorin and boom, exactly. But don't go on simple. That was the rule. But otherwise, I never been like, yeah, whoever it is, just go, mate. It's obviously some people are better at the moment than others, but it's the same for me. When I was entry, whoever I faced, I done always the same. I didn't go. I always press Z. Z was my favorite. I mean W in English keyboard.
French keyboards. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. So it's Z, but I always press W and hope for the best and hope no one kills me through a smoke, kills me blind, or my teammate miss a nade. It can go so many ways. Sometimes I remember I died like five Byron in a row. Was a miss flash, then he got killed blind, then through a smoke, then a miss flash. I mean, it can happen so many things when you're entry fragging. But yeah, I think you shouldn't care about who you play, and at the moment, the kill feed, I mean, I'm not even watching. Sometimes I play against someone, and after all, I see on the Shell TV that he had crazy stats against us. But I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that he was pretty good or whatever. So I think it's the strength because, as you said, I think some players are scared. They see ZywOo in 1v1, they're like, oh my god, oh, it's pretty tough. Or in 1v2, I always say that when I see ZywOo in 1v2 and winning it, I'm like, okay, if it was me, they will never play like that. They played so scared. They were scared, but they would have killed him 100 times.
Dude, it happened at this major, that round against G2 on Nuke, when he dropped down and did the 1v4. Yeah. Dude, those two players towards that door never just sit there like that because this is a normal player. Like, they were all just scared he was going to kill them all, and he did because they just stood there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly about that. Sometimes it just because he's ZywOo or someone is or simple is simple, people are scared to play against them. They're scared to play, and that's the fun part because when we talk about that, I wasn't obviously simple and ZywOo are 10 times better than me. It's no problem about that, but I will never be scared to take a duel against them. Never, because I don't know. It's just a player, just a human after all. So who cares?
I have a story to tell. You know it because you told me about this, and MBK told me the same thing. But if someone's not from the French scene, it's one of those things I've tried to explain to people because it just seems so alien. But I understand things are just different in different places. So at the Boston Major, right, everyone remembers Cloud9 won the tournament and they beat FaZe, and then they beat SK with a stand-in. But what they forget is the first opponent they played in the playoffs was G2. And I'm just going to tell everyone some information here. G2 had already beaten Cloud9 in this tournament. They played them on cash. They actually beat them fairly handily. You play them in the semis, quarters, sorry. Cloud9's not a team that's like winning tournaments at this time, you know, like you're both sort of like high-ranked teams. And I remember thinking like, dude, this is right there for them. If they win this game, you know, maybe they're going to the final. And I heard this story because I looked at the veto and I was like, but you won on cash. Like, it's always there. You could just take cash as your map. And the story you told me, again, people aren't going to believe this, is that in your French teams, there was a weird superstition that if you play a team already in the same tournament and you beat them, you never pick that map again, which, again, like to someone else did go, you always pick that map because you just won against them. So explain the thinking and why you would veto this way as a team.
You know the fun part? It doesn't come from the French scene. It comes from Fnatic.
Oh, okay.
And they told me that. I remember Frusha told me that back then. That's okay. And I think we try to do the same. But I think obviously, for example, this major, the problem with the three guys with a big flu, like really big flu during the tournaments. And so I don't know if because Cloud9 deserved this win and they deserve the tournament, obviously. But maybe the game would have been done better. But I remember my team was dead. I had kennyS, shox, and NBK, I think, or Body, I don't remember. They were dead. We couldn't practice doing nothing, playing CS. They're just lying on the bed and sleeping because they were dead. But yeah, that was a thing. That was a thing that when we won on the map, because the idea behind that is that when you play a map and you win. When you win, you're not gonna change anything in some sense. You're like, okay, we won. But when you lose, you know how to adapt better. And back then, that was the way we were thinking. So sometimes you always try to brain in the veto. For example, we tried a few times when you play FaZe lately. Like everyone picked the map that the other one wouldn't think because we had 100% on Nuke, but we didn't pick Nuke against them. We picked Anubis, and they didn't pick Inferno, but they picked Overpass. So you know, it's also like sometimes just trying to mind game against the opponent, and I think it's fair sometimes. And back then, also they were really bad on Overpass. I remember. I know that they were good at this tournament because they beat FaZe also in final, but I remember they were not playing good. We were like, okay, it's also a strong map for us. Yeah, I think definitely we could have played any map at this tournament. Sometime you know in this quarterfinal we will have lost anyway. So that's the thing. But yeah, that's the way we were reacting, and that's not something I do right now anymore.
One thing that's actually, I think, pretty legit is even though, if you look at the way any sport works, by the way, if you go and look, all the people who say, like, look, I'm different. I'm Thorin, so I can say what the fuck I want. Most people think Messi's the best player ever, right, of this generation, right? I just like Ronaldo because I like different things, right? But I do notice that all the people who say Ronaldo typically are people who played with Ronaldo or his coach, etc. So they have an obvious bias, right? You're the opposite because in your case, you should by default just always say ZywOo's the best. He's better than Simple because it's so close. It's like, why not? And most people would even just say it's your player. You big him up. You tell him you're fucking better than Simple. Of course we're better. In fact, you know what, guys? If you don't think he is, you just don't get it. And, you know, there's something you could do. So many. You've been super legit. You've always told me, like, actually, you know, fair enough. In some ways, simple is better. Maybe he's even the better player now in certain years, etc. So my question to you is this: if you have someone like ZywOo, one thing that people have noticed about him, which is probably one of the only complaints you can have about him as a player, is whereas with Simple, he had to like overcome really thinking he knows everything and he's always right and he's always the right. He had to overcome that and learn the team play. It sounds like it's almost the opposite quest for ZywOo. Isn't he in some ways, hasn't he been too much of a good teammate or too unselfish at times? Like, it feels like, I've always wondered, doesn't he still have a little bit extra gear he could go to apEX?
Okay, so that's fun to think about, talk about that, because it's something that it changed this year, and that's something that Zonic helped him to change with. We had a talk in the late 2022, because obviously after Abu Dhabi, after the Blast War final, we had a big talk with the team because that wasn't enough. 2022 was really shit for us. We played pretty bad, and with the players and investment around, that wasn't good. So we had a big talk, and Zonic said to ZywOo, he said, "I want you to be more like not to have a bad behavior all the time, but sometimes say, guys, like for example, ZywOo, I mean, from this year, for example, he's playing a lot, and when he sees other people, like, come on, mate, play a bit of Counter-Strike. I'm not gonna waste my fucking time with you. Just hurry up." And he's way more like that. Yeah, he's way more vocal and helping more the team in that sense. Because when you have such a good player like Simple or ZywOo in a team, obviously when he talks, you listen. When he talks, you listen more than me or Zonic talking 24/7, because we have to. When the star player is talking sometimes, he doesn't have to talk every day. Just when he's talking, everyone shut up and listen. And that's what we told him. It gives, and also when we hear you star player giving like feeling good, being good into the game that is really tense, it gives you also a lot of confidence. It gives you a lot of confidence. And obviously now, ZywOo is more like, he's more that kind of guy. He's more like, also, I wish when he has Deagle and we have an AK, he's like, guys, what the fuck am I doing with a Deagle? Give me your AK, mate. He's not ready for that, but soon. But I'm checking that myself. When I see him with a Deagle and I have an AK, I'm like, no way. Give me that Deagle. And but yeah, he's doing that way more, and I think that's also why he's being better. Also at the major, he's been better in big tournaments. He's been better because he also like taking the responsibilities. He has to be. He's a fantastic guy, and it's really good to play with him. But a fantastic guy doesn't give you trophies. He doesn't help you to win trophies. We don't need him to be like a villain or a bad guy, or we just need him to be a bit more pushy. Being himself, but a bit more pushy. And that's what he does right now. And I think it's so helpful for the team. And he's not like too bad in some sense. It's just really, really nice. I think like Simple can be way too bad and can not help the team in some points, because in the low of pressure tournament with young guns, it's tough. But ZywOo, I think, is at the right balance right now. And it's perfect to see that he can also like get better. Obviously in 19, when he was like the young in the team, he was just killing people. But then he understood that he had credit in the team. He's known as the like one of the best player ever. So come on, obviously he's not gonna be one of the GOAT of CSGO because he's too young. But like this year, without a doubt, he will be the top one in the world because he's way above everyone right now. So in fucking 5 years, he's gonna be 3 times the best player in the world and 2 times the second best player. Who would have believed that? No one would doubt that. Even Simple when he was young and he came into the scene, he didn't do that. So obviously we asked him to be more punchy, and we needed more him, because also he reads the game so well individually. So we were like, also you can get it with a call, you can help the team, and he does that more as well. And when he does a call, everyone listen and shut up and fucking go. And it's also why we came better this year. It's because of that. And obviously it's pure. It's just a joy to have him like that. And as you said also, I don't want to lie to any of my teammates. If I think that Simple right now is better than him, I will tell him. And I think that's good, because maybe he will react to that. He's like, yeah, fuck him. He's right. This motherfucker. He's fucking right. And I think that's something that is really good, to be honest with him. And I would have done the same with Nico. I would have done the same with Simple if I played with him. Obviously, we would have been a bit more like clashy in some point. But I will be honest. I need to be honest with my guys. And I think it's also part of me being a captain. Bro, if you're worst, of course, when I heard like who you think is better this year, when I heard Messi, I'm a Messi fan, but when I heard Messi when it wasn't his year, I was like, the fuck, mate. Just be honest. Maybe he will slap your face, but be honest. Don't say he is the best when he's not the best. And last year, 2022 and 2021, ZywOo wasn't the best player in the world. He wasn't. Last year was even close with Shiro for the second best player in the world. But you tell him, and then maybe his ego will come and will say, okay, don't move, mate. Okay, I'm worse than Simple, I will show you. And maybe give him a lot of strength and a lot of power to get better. But I will never be like a liar towards my teammates. If I think someone is bad or someone is doing bad or someone is worse than any other people, I'm ready to say it publicly. It's no problem. My teammates know that now, so it's perfect.
In the interviews, ZywOo does always make it seem like he's just super chill. Like, you know, he's not really thinking about the rivalry as Simple. You know, he's not worrying about the pressure of the tournament. But people might know that, first of all, not only is it almost most times, especially because, like, Nico's the rifler, it really is just those two. When they're on their game, like, they're just the two, like, fucking chosen ones, like some anime or some shit, where it's like, if they go off, they can just win the whole game. And it's always a fascinating battle when they play each other even. But the other thing to me as well was, he did have that terrible stat, obviously, because so much of the time was in the online period, where he just hadn't had that many tournaments he'd been able to play out of Katowice and Cologne and majors. And so, unfortunately, until this one, the record wasn't very good. He hadn't been in many finals. He hadn't had many chances to win an MVP, etc. Do you think it did mean something to him to not only win the major, but also win the MVP and sort of have this all happen?
Well, obviously, he had this Cologne MVP, though, in 19, when he was fantastic for one of the first big stage he did. But then, okay, I will be honest. Of course, yeah, he has a lot of pressure. But the problem is that 2021 or 2022, look at the team, look at the players if they're performing. So he kind of knew that if he didn't perform, the team wouldn't perform. That's what happened in the 2 years. And it's really tough. I think it's really tough for a young gun, that you know that all the responsibility are on your shoulder. And why he perform now better? Because he has the team. He has the team. And it's much better for him. He knows that Spinx can step up. I mean, he's stepping up pretty massively. He know now that Madesclaire is there. Freak can get some games. Me as well. He's not the only one. And obviously, he doesn't feel that he has to do something. He just can play his game and see how it goes. And if he wants to play aggressive, he plays aggressive. But he doesn't have to do this extra move that's gonna kill him or that's gonna fuck him up. And I think that's a huge important thing in your head, most likely, when there's a lot of pressure. Because, yeah, everyone was waiting for him at majors. Everyone were waiting for him, but okay, sometimes he didn't play that good. But I remember you said that sometimes you said that Heroic was his nemesis. That's true. It was really tough to play against them, and it was pretty bad to play against them. And I tried to tell him before, like the 2-2 at the Antwerp Major, I told him, bro, it's the worst team you play against. I mean, they always fuck you up. Maybe it's time to shine. And it wasn't the time, the right moment. But yeah, I think also ZywOo needs the difference between him and Simple. Simple is more like how can I say? What's the right word? A mercenary. That's why he was good in Liquid as well when he was doing the majors, because he doesn't give a fuck what's going on around him. He's ready for everything. ZywOo needs more. It's not about the system behind him. He's ready to do everything, but he needs to feel more the team. He's a bit less mercenary than I think that's why Simple is really like Ronaldo-ish, and for me Messi is more ZywOo-ish, because they're really similar. Messi needs to feel good in the team. Ronaldo is ready for everything, but when they're in the prime, I think Messi is better because he is a genius, and I think ZywOo is the same. Like Ronaldo is really hardworking guy, like Simple. They're really, I think they really say
yeah, it's a good comparison, right?
Yeah. And Messi is more like talent, pure talent, and I think ZywOo is pure talent. It doesn't mean that he doesn't work, because he works, but not as much as Ronaldo or Simple. But yeah, I think like ZywOo needs more a team around him. And yeah, of course we lost PGL major in Stockholm against them, but he was playing with Kyochin and Mizuta. Tell me a guy that was at their level in Navi, and we lose 16-11, 16-13. Let's be honest. We need to see that. And in 19, we were fucking Navi up every tournament.
Yeah.
Every tournament. But he didn't have the team back then. We had a better team than him. And it's also, I think it's also about that when we see the Ballon d'Or in football, when we see that Ronaldo won 17, 18, 19, when they won like all the Champions League in a row. Look at the midfield they had. Kroos, Modric, and Casemiro was the best midfielder. Same with Messi on his prime. He had Busquets, Xavi, Iniesta. It's easy to play with these guys. But when you're such a talent guy, you also need those guns behind you. Those like guys that are more in the shadow but that are doing everything for the team. And ZywOo didn't have that for a long time. I have to be honest. The last time he had that was probably when we had EPIC. But before that, he didn't. So I think it goes both sides. I think right now Navi are getting worse and Simple as well. That's also normal. It has to happen. They don't have the best team right now, and it's not working in the way they want. And it was the same for ZywOo. So I think it's really important that it's not only about the player themselves; it's also how the team is going, the moment of the team. And Navi, obviously, for 21, 22 was a bit harder, but they were still like a big contender. But yeah, they had like this beat guy was insane, and the electronic. I'm not gonna talk electronic. Top five rifle ever. He also had that, and that's what also ZywOo missed at some point. And now he got that more, and obviously he's more like he got more confidence about his teammates. Maybe before he was scared that Kyojin or Misota or whoever didn't have his back. I don't know. He's not also a talking guy. He wasn't talking too much about that, but it's maybe about that. But he was still performing well. So I think it's also a thing that people need to understand.
When Spinx came along in ENVyUs, it wasn't just good. He was actually they were in the semis of the major and the final of EPL, etc. I went and it's one of those players where I really did my homework and I was watching all the POVs and the demos and I was trying to see is this legit or is it just he's just on a hot streak? And I remember watching him being like, holy shit, what you call the eye test. It checks out completely. This guy looks insane. He actually does look like he can be one of the best riflers ever. But then when he went from that team to your team, basically it just looked like a different player. I remember watching and just being the aim's there, but he's just not ever in the same situation. He doesn't ever seem like he gets the same type of kills even. And then plus there were definitely times on the map where he was just disconnected. He was here, the team was there, or he was with the group, but he couldn't contribute. What was the riddle that you had to crack here? Because it seems spoiler, I know Snappy quite well from ENVyUs, and he basically just straight up told me that when he watches Vitality win the major, he was like, there's some of the strats we used to do with Spinx. We actually literally used him in that way or on this spot on the map. So what was the process of solving whatever the issue was to get him to be a great player again?
Well, I think there are two big things. The first one is that obviously in ENVyUs they had a fantastic team, but they had no winning major people. They had no big star. They had no one in some point. Really good players, but in terms of achievement in the career, I think that was pretty poor. So when you arrived in Vitality, he had ZywOo, 2 times best player in the world. He had Dupree and Magisk, 3 and 4 time major champion. He had me or whoever, but they had those guys, and he was impressed to play with them. And I think that was pretty tough for him at the beginning. I remember that he used to be in ENVyUs. He was a fucking amazing A player on Overpass on City. He arrived in the team. I was like, okay, it's not going well. And then we checked a bit of his ENVyUs demos. And I saw that he was asking way more utility and help from Hades. And he was scared to do that with ZywOo because it's ZywOo.
Right.
And I told him, Overpass, on City side, the star player is not the Oper, he's the rifler. He's the fucking rifler. So you have to play for yourself. You have to play 70% of the time for yourself and ask this Oper, whoever is with you, to support you. In 2023, look at stats from Spinx on City side Overpass. I think it's 150. It's 150 minimum. He always carries us on the City, playing aggressive, killing people, and not being scared. And so that's the first step. The second step is most likely in 2022. We had this more slow approach that ENVyUs didn't have. And from what I heard from Lotan, from Spinx, he told me that no much mid-run call. It's a lot of beginning of the round. And me, I'm fine with that, but also I need to work on the map. I need to know how to do, and I think that's something. I think he reinvented himself as well in Vitality. he had to do things that he never done, like this really passive lurk sometime, and he just didn't do that in ENVYUs at all, because they had like this really fast approach level. And I think that he's been really good at adapting now from the 2022, from 2023. And I try to help him also, in the sense that I try to tell him what I expect from him as lurker on all the maps, in terms of nade, in terms of blah blah blah. And also what helped him right now, I think it's also we have a faster approach in CS on T side overall. We play faster. So obviously it's helpful. Obviously, when you come from another team and you bring few things with you, and I'm not gonna lie, we have maybe 1% of our playbook from ENVYUs. It's basically nothing. But yeah, he's been also like giving few tips about the other team, and thanks God he does that. Obviously, you need another like a way to CCS. But yeah, I think he's developed like right now he's a top 5 player in the world in the last 6 months, and also yeah, his way to play is way different. He takes more initiative. He helps the team more. He feels in his shoes right now. He knows that he's part of the team, and we told him that we need him to perform. We fucking need him to perform. We need this Spinx from ENVYUs. We need this Spinx that is able to do everything. And also on T-side, I told him, it's not you to go first. If you have to bait sometime, do it. It's your role. And just to get into it, he did it. And right now, sometimes he wants to go because he's more confident in his place. So it just like goes both ways. But I think he did a good work towards himself to reinvent himself in the way that he played CS and being more confident and taking more duels. And also, I think we try to help him in the process. But yeah, I think that was pretty tough for him. But also, ENVYUs was his first real team. So when you're lurking, you have a really specific role. It's not easy to change from one in-game leader to another. They think really different way. So yeah, I think that he's been doing a really good job. And like at least now we have this Spinx, even maybe a better Spinx that ENVYUs had.
Yeah, because I know actually a lot of people, because of the initial period where they won the Pro League and then you had all this period where it wasn't great at the major, Rio, etc. A lot of people were out on him and were like, actually, maybe he's not like replace him with the Akindar or whatever the fuck players they were saying. All I'll say is those people, you missed badly, because when you see him on his form now, mate, his aim is fucking ridiculous. Like when you watch him play, if you're watching the game, right, and they're on the POV of the other person, it's like that famous, when Snipe to Die does those reverse POVs. And the best one for Rifle is Nico, right? Because he does you see the elbow and then they're dead. It's like that, mate. No one ever wins an aim duel against him. If it's a fair, 1v1 aim duel, and both players, he wins every time, it feels like. He just headshots him immediately. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. I mean, he is fantastic at that. And it's funny because what he tells me a lot of time, he says, I like duels. I want to take duels. Okay, let's take duels, mate. And what I'm trying to do on a few maps, I'm like, it's general support. So I'm doing flash pick for him, and then another pass, look at B. I think he destroyed everyone also on T side because he wants to take duel. And so I also adapted to him, like the way I needed to call, because he's already different. And we didn't have a lurker back then with in 2022 with Misuta. So also we had to play differently, and I was fine with that. I was also asking him, what do you need? I also need from you to know what you need from me. I need you to tell me, okay, I need to do that. I want to do that, etc. And I think we had a lot of talks together, just 1v1, just, okay, now I'm going to do that for you. Okay, it's good. But can you also do that for me? Another pass, if he asks me anything, I'm doing it for him. And now he really stepped this step that he is the second star of the team, and he needs to be there, and he needs to, if someone needs to support him, he asks for it. And that, yeah. I mean, obviously, it's pretty easy when you just won 2 tournaments in a row, and I think it goes well. But it's also like the work we've done before towards that, like being able to play his style in the way he wants it. And yeah, that wasn't easy at the beginning, and it was like underperforming, obviously, but just because he was a bit scared. He was a bit scared to play with us, and when he wasn't, and then he became not scared, and let's go.
Where I come from in England, people will often say, oh yeah, you and whose army? Well, I'll tell you what, I've got my own army backing me up. They're called the Skrilluminati. Thank you to Ahmed Haju, Joseph Adcock, Matt Pugnaccio-Racula, Theogony, Animosity, Bot Pounder 420, Jensen Gore, Tobias Bernasconi, Tosh, Toucan, and as always, you know it, a special thanks goes out to my boy Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? You want teasers? Find out who's in the upcoming interviews. Do you want to ask me a question in my monthly AMA? Maybe you want to be part of those long discussions where we talk about anything and everything in esports. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and enlist today in the Skrilluminati via the Patreon link in the box below.